What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham Jason Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking the latest Prime Target special available on the network and the WWE YouTube channel, focusing on Shayna Baszler versus Rhea Ripley this Wednesday on NXT for the NXT Women's Championship. Now, they've done 3 other Prime Target specials this year. They did one for Gargano and Cole, I want to say before TakeOver 25 in June, kind of recapping the build to that rematch at the TakeOver 25 special, which I was there for. Amazing match, amazing show. They did one for that one, again for Cole and Gargano at TakeOver Toronto ahead of the rematch of the NXT Championship. And they did a third one a few short months ago, about 4 months ago at this point, for Tyler Bate versus Walter for the WWE United Kingdom Championship at the NXT UK TakeOver show in Cardiff. Now, they haven't done one of these Prime Target shows yet for any episode of NXT. It's called Prime Target Takeover for a reason, because they usually do them for like the main events of these takeover shows. For the TakeOver 25 show, TakeOver Toronto, and then NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff. They didn't do one for the TakeOver War Games show. It wasn't really all that necessary just because it was a War Games match and not a one-on-one match like Walter and Bate was, and Gargano and Cole from those respective TakeOver shows earlier this year. But they are doing one for tomorrow's Baszler versus Ripley match for the NXT Women's Championship, which I think is awesome. It's already been announced, actually, that it's going to be main eventing that show tomorrow on USA Network. It's already been announced that Adam Cole and Finn Balor will be opening up the show for the NXT Championship, which can only mean one thing: Baszler, Ripley will main event the show. And honestly, before we go any further with this thing, I'm going to tell you flat out, the odds are predicting it. I wrote a whole article about it this morning for Sports Betting Dime, that I think Ripley's walking out the new NXT Women's Champion. I really do. The match should be great. They've been working towards this for many months now, so for them to kind of go ahead and do a Target special, one of these Prime Target shows for Baszler and Ripley, really, really shows how important they view this match, how seriously they're taking this match tomorrow night, which is really cool. But if you haven't seen any of these Prime Target shows before, it's kind of like a mini documentary focusing on both competitors, the road to how they got to where they are now, what they're thinking ahead of the big match, whatever it might be, at the takeover, on an episode of NXT, whatever it might be. They're focusing on the individuals themselves and their mindset going into this big championship match they have coming up. And Baszler and Ripley, it's no different. Now, they've already shown clips of this on NXT last week. I didn't really catch it when it aired on NXT last week. I was kind of half paying attention. And also, too, since they were promoting it as a Prime Target special on the network the following week, I figured, why bother watching this in NXT when I could just watch the whole thing as part of the Prime Target special the following week, which is exactly what I did. But this was great, and they promoted it as airing at 8 p.m. on the network tonight on Tuesday night. Thankfully, they uploaded it a lot earlier. They uploaded it on the network like early Tuesday morning, and it's also available, like I said earlier at the start of the review, on the WWE YouTube channel. So if you don't have the network, you can check it out for free on the WWE YouTube channel right now. It's only about 15 minutes in length. The other Prime Target specials are usually around a half an hour from what I can remember. This is very short and sweet for a match that's headlining an episode of NXT. I can't say I'm surprised. But still, for what it is, must-see stuff, very good. And if you weren't already hyped, for whatever reason, I'd be shocked if you weren't, for Ripley and Baszler tomorrow night for the NXT Women's Championship, this will do its job in getting you hyped for said match. So we kick this thing off with Shayna Baszler saying, "I am the most dominant female in WWE history." And Rhea Ripley talks about preparing for this match, and she's been preparing for this match her entire life, without ever really knowing that she'd be facing Shayna Baszler up until recently. But this is the moment that she's been working for her entire career. So after the brief intro there, we hear from Rhea Ripley on a Monsters radio show, probably in the local Florida market, that area or whatever. And they talk about the match with Baszler to promote the match on USA. And it's really cool, too, because I don't really know if the NXT talents had really done anything like this prior to recently, before the brands moved to USA Network on cable television, network television, whatever it is. For them to go out there and do radio shows, probably promoting the local Florida house shows and stuff like that, but never anything on TV, like to promote a takeover. Maybe they were doing that for the takeovers, but that's really about it. But the show is never on TV until recently, so they never had any reason to do local media interviews until now, which is cool. So the interviewers ask her, like, Do you still get nervous to this day going into matches like this one coming up with Shayna for the NXT Women's Championship? And she goes, listen, I've always had nerves. I always will have nerves anytime I step through that curtain. And I'm not overly anxious going into this match, but I will never not have nerves whenever I walk through that curtain. We hear from Shayna Baszler, and this is where they aired the clip from. This aired on NXT last week, where she's talking about the cars. She's talking about muscle cars, and she says there's something about tried and true muscle cars that you just can't get anywhere else. And she can relate to those type of cars in the sense that she doesn't really care about what anyone else thinks of her. She doesn't care about the fans, who supports her, what people are thinking about her, what people think about her reign as NXT Women's Champion. She doesn't care about any of that stuff. She only cares about cars, and she cares about the type of people such as herself that just go out there to get the job done. She's not there to appease the audience. She's not there to, put on a show for the fans. She's there to win the championship and hold that championship for as long as humanly possible. Rhea Ripley, we hear from her and her backstory, how she got into wrestling. She started watching wrestling. She got hooked on a match between Ric Flair and Triple H. They show the footage of the match from 2005. I assume that's what she's talking about, the Last Man Standing match from Survivor Series 05, which was a great match, by the way. Either that one or the Taboo Tuesday Steel Cage match. Probably the Last Man Standing match. Either way, I guess she started watching wrestling in 2005. That's crazy, and she's only 19 or something years old, so she started watching. She's 20 now, I think? She got signed at 19, which was 2 years ago, so she's probably 21, 22 now. And that was, she got signed at 19 in 2016, so she started watching when she was 8 years old, which is insane. She started training at 16 years old. She drove 10 hours for a tryout back then to Melbourne for even the shot of being a part of the tryout. Even though well knowing that she couldn't be a part of the tryout because she was too young, she made the drive anyway, which is unbelievable. She got another opportunity to compete in to participate in a WWE tryout in 2016 at the age of 19, and she wrestled 2 matches at the tryout. And we hear from Canyon Ceman, who people probably know from the Breaking Ground show, which I reviewed here on Network and Chill years ago, like back in 2016. It aired in late 2015. It was a great show. I think he's one of the head talent scouts for WWE along with William Regal. We hear from him, who kind of blows his own whistle here, touts his own horn, whatever the expression is, about how he knew in that time, upon seeing her at that tryout, that they were not only going to sign her, that she'd be a future WWE superstar, but that she would be a future champion in the WWE. And she got offered a contract right on the spot. Baszler talks about being able to, or having the opportunity to speak at one of these tryout camps recently. She got asked by WWE to go to one of these tryout camps and speak to these hopefuls about potentially getting signed by WWE. And she basically tells them, you people do not have what it takes. Only a very few of you, from what I've seen in the 2 days that I've been here and watching you guys try out for the WWE, only a mere elite handful of you have what it takes to be a WWE superstar, so don't get your hopes up. She says it doesn't even really matter, because at the end of all of this is just a match with me. She's probably not talking to the guys when she says stuff like that. When she talks about how, their end game is having a match with her, I'm sure the guys at the tryout probably aren't going to have a match with her eventually, but the women certainly will. That's what she's getting at here. And she says, listen, you got to tell yourself, you got to ask yourself, is this all worth it? Is this really what you want? Because at the end of all of this, when I just beat you up and defeat you, you're going to be regretting your decision to come here. And she says, if you walk out the door right now, it doesn't even matter because no one will remember you anyway. I thought that was a great line. She's like, if you quit right now, no one will care. So might as well just leave with your head hung low while you still can, before it gets more embarrassing down the road when you have to quit after a loss to me. I thought that was a really, really great line there from Shayna Baszler. She also says, that's good because they start clapping. When she goes, oh, how many of you are going to stick around to see the end of this tryout? And all of them cheer, and they're like, yeah, we'll stay, blah, blah, blah. And they start, applauding. And she goes, that's good, because we're looking for new bodies to break anyway. Which, again, I thought was a great tryout. It was a great line of this tryout thing that she had to speak in front of. And then they start booing, because they obviously know this is coming. It's all part of her character, but I thought it was great anyway. Rhea recaps her journey up to this point, talking about how her first match for WWE on a national stage was part of the Mae Young Classic. I'm not sure if she had any house matches prior to that point. I guess not. She was already signed by the time the Mae Young Classic started. But she competed in the Mae Young Classic, got eliminated, not the first round, at least the second or third round, if I recall correctly. She did a lot better the second year. She came back the second year, got knocked off, I want to say in the semifinals. Maybe not by Toni Storm. I want to say Io Shirai, if I'm not mistaken. But she went pretty far the second time after Tegan Nox actually got hurt in their match, and she advanced anyway. She advanced instead of Tegan Nox and did really, really well. That was when she reinvented herself as the badass that she is today, kind of exploring her roots and being the badass that she truly is on the inside and not playing a character, which I thought was cool. And then she went over to the UK, became the first ever NXT UK Women's Champion by beating Toni Storm. She led her team to victory at War Games over Survivor Series weekend. And speaking of Survivor Series, she went on to Survivor Series the very next night to be the sole survivor for her team for Team NXT, lastly eliminating Sasha Banks, which was really cool. She said the last thing left for her to do, the only thing left for her to do, is to become the NXT Women's Champion. We see highlights of the first ever all-women's card for NXT at a Jacksonville house show just recently. We hear from fans who were picking between Ripley and Baszler for this upcoming NXT Women's Championship match. Baszler talks about her MMA career and how, people like to poke fun at that and how she couldn't make it at that. But since she's been here in NXT, except for one hiccup when she lost to Kairi Sane to take over, what would it have been, Brooklyn 4? I was actually there at that show when she dropped the championship to Kairi Sane the first time. She said, aside from that, I've been completely dominant my entire time here. And Rhea Ripley says, I know deep down that I'm the one who can beat Shayna Baszler. When everyone else couldn't, I know that I'm the one, and that entire locker room knows that I can beat Shayna Baszler. We see some highlights of a house show that they did about probably late last week in Venice, California. Baszler says that she doesn't care that the fans support Rhea Ripley because she's going to win anyway, as she has every other time prior to this point. She promises to hold on to that championship until the end of time, for as long as she possibly can. That reign, according to her, in her words, is not coming to an end this coming Wednesday on NXT. Baszler taunts a young fan in the front row of that show I just got done talking about, the Venice, California house show. She kind of goes up to her because this fan has a toy NXT Women's Championship. And Baszler says, I don't know what she says, but she goes up to her. She kind of gets right up in her face. And she goes, this is what's going to become of anyone who steps up to me as champion, blah, blah, blah. So she goes back in the ring, chokes out Candice LeRae, who she just got done beating up on this show. And out comes Rhea Ripley, and Rhea Ripley chases her off from the ring, as she has every other time prior to this point. And Baszler talks about Rhea Ripley's momentum and how she's riding this wave of momentum heading into their match. But she also brings up, listen, everyone else who I've beaten up to this point, they had momentum too. And she runs down the long list of competitors that she's beaten during her time on top in NXT. And it's a very long list. She includes Ember Moon. She didn't mention Kairi Sane, which, unless I missed it, which I thought was weird because she had her most prolific matches with Kairi Sane late last year. But she mentions Ember Moon, Dakota Kai. She mentions Bianca Belair, Io Shirai. She mentions Mia Yim, Candice LeRae. She mentions the Survivor Series match with Becky Lynch and Bayley, where she beat both of them in the same exact match, which was pretty crazy, and a big feather in her cap. And now Rhea Ripley's next, come this episode of NXT on Wednesday night. She said, your fate consists of either tapping, snapping, or napping. That's the only outcome that this match will see come our match on Wednesday. So we hear from Keith Lee, who talk about, who they have going over in this match. They all mostly pick Rhea Ripley to win the match and to win the championship as a result. We hear from Keith Lee, Tyler Breeze, Angel Garza, the all-new NXT Cruiserweight Championship as of last week. The all-new NXT Cruiserweight Champion. Bronson Reed, who's also from Australia, so he knows Rhea Ripley fairly well. Isaiah Swerve Scott. We also hear from Leo Rush. And then Rhea Ripley says to end this thing before we get the final hype video package, she goes, we are going to have a new NXT Women's Champion in herself. And that was what ended this thing. I thought this was great, really strong stuff here. Again, it's only about 15 minutes long, but for what it is, I thought it was great. And we need to see more of this stuff I mean, we kind of did last week. They can't devote the entire show to shit like this because it was 15 minutes long and they had a stacked card of matches for last week's show. And they showed some clips of it, so I can't really blame them. But we need to see more of this stuff on Raw and SmackDown. We get a lot of it in NXT with guys like Cole, Gargano, Tyler Bate, Walter, and now Rhea Ripley and Shayna. But never do we get this type of shit on the main roster, and we absolutely should. And I think this is a great use of the WWE Network and their YouTube channel to get as many eyes on this match as possible, to give it a big fight feel, to kind of hammer home how long this match has been in the works for, dating back to August. That was when Rhea Ripley initially showed up in NXT to confront Shayna Baszler. This match has been in the works now for 4 freaking months. They had that no contest on an episode of NXT back in September. They clashed at War Games and recently in NXT TV. It all comes to this on the final live episode of NXT in 2019. Who will walk out the all-new NXT UK, or I keep saying NXT UK in my mind, the all-new NXT Women's Champion? I think it's going to be Rhea Ripley, but I also think there's a fighting chance that Shayna retains her title again, because anytime people have bet against Shayna, she has always won. I thought she would lose the championship last year to Kairi Sane at the second War Game show. She didn't. I thought she would lose it to Bianca in January. She didn't. I thought she would lose it in that Fatal 4-Way over WrestleMania weekend in New York. She didn't. I thought she would lose it to Io Shirai or Mia Yim, and she didn't, and she didn't, and she didn't. Especially when it came to the Candice LeRae match. When it came to the Candice match in October, I thought she would lose then in the first big show going, airing opposite of the AEW Dynamite debut. She didn't lose then either. So she is not one to bet against, but honestly, I do think it is time for her to lose and for Rhea Ripley to be crowned the all-new NXT Women's Champion. So all in all, this was a great special, really, really good stuff here. Check it out right now, not only on the WWE Network, but also for free on the WWE YouTube channel. If you don't have the network, which is fine, they put this up in its entirety on the YouTube channel as well. So get hyped for tomorrow's NXT. Should be a great show. Rhea Ripley, Shayna Baszler, NXT Women's Championship main event, and then also kicking off the show for the NXT Championship, commercial-free, Finn Balor versus Adam Cole. Dynamite looks, really, really convincing and appealing and exciting on paper, but honestly, I'm going to be watching NXT first tomorrow night, so I hope you join me on the USA Network on Wednesday night. So until next time, guys, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Very much appreciate it. We'll be back with an all-new Network and Chill. I forgot to mention this yesterday when I broke down the Broken Skull Sessions episode with Goldberg and Stone Cold Steve Austin. That aired on Sunday after TLC. I watched it yesterday, broke it down here on the channel. Very lengthy, 45-minute review in its entirety. Check it out right now here on the channel. But I forgot to mention in that review, I had mentioned that there was something coming up on the network. Not this, but like something else I'd be watching and reviewing. It wasn't this, and then it dawned on me while watching Raw last night. I forgot for whatever reason that I was referring to the WWE 365 on Seth Rollins. Now, I don't know when it's airing, either Saturday or Sunday. Either way, whenever it airs, you can expect a full review of that special right here on Network and Show, probably the very next day. But anyway, guys, enjoy the rest of your holiday season. Enjoy NXT tomorrow night. Should be a great show. Until then, I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.